Welcome back! Alright, in today's tutorial, we are going to learn how to reharmonize simple minor key chord progressions and give them a more quirky, almost magical quality, using something called the Dorian-mode. It's simple, it's exotic, and as always, it's probably way easier than you realized. We're going to start with a quick breakdown of what makes the Dorian-mode unique. Then we'll reharmonize a basic minor key chord progression. And finally, I'll show you how to write your own chord progressions, strictly in the Dorian-mode. So without further ado, let's get started. So right here, we have a simple A natural minor scale. Now, the Dorian mode is what's known as a minor mode, meaning, among other things, that it shares mostly the same notes as a natural minor scale, but with one key difference. To create a Dorian mode, all you need to do is find the 6th scale degree of any natural minor scale and raise it up by a half step. That's it. So in A minor, the 6th note is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, F natural. If we take this and we raise it to F sharp, boom, suddenly we have an A Dorian scale. This works for any natural minor scale. Starting with B minor, raise the G to a G sharp, and boom, you got B Dorian. Working with E natural minor, find C, raise it half sharp, voila, you've got E Dorian. No matter which natural minor scale you're working with, if you find the 6th scale degree, raise it by 1 half step, you've found the parallel Dorian mode. This one note is the only difference between the two scales, and it's called our characteristic note, because this one note is what gives the Dorian mode its entirely unique, quirky, and oddly magical personality. Now, to find the chords of any mode, we can use the simple add skip rule. Add a note, skip the next note in the scale, and add the 3rd. Skip the 4th, and add the 5th. And then repeat. Using this method, we can very quickly identify which of these chords contain the characteristic note. These chords are called characteristic chords. They're packed with the personality of your mode and are especially powerful when placed directly before or after your tonic chord. One of the most idiosyncratic combos from a Dorian mode being the 1 chord to the major 4. So now let's talk about reharmonization. We're going to talk about 3 simple ways to transform a boring minor chord progression into something much more colorful using the Dorian mode. Here we have a very simple chord progression written in the key of A minor. Strategy number 1 is to just very simply end your chord progression with a modal cadence. A modal cadence is just any time a characteristic chord is followed by the tonic chord. Currently, this chord progression ends with a very traditional 5-to-1 authentic cadence. But if we swap out this E major for one of our characteristic chords, like D major, we instantly get a much softer, more colorful ending. Strategy number 2 is very similar. This time, we're going to look for opportunities to insert modal cadences somewhere in the middle of our chord progression. All you need to do is find a tonic chord used in the middle of your chord progression, and then replace the chord directly before it with one of your characteristic chords, preferably one that has 1 or 2 notes in common with your pre-existing chord, if you want the smoothest sound. So, for example, in bar 5, we have an A minor. That's our tonic chord. The chord directly in front of it is a G major. The easiest swap out we can have is to replace the G major with a B minor, because both chords contain both a B natural and D natural. There's only the F sharp and G that are different, which creates a nice smooth little transition between the two. And finally, strategy number 3 is probably the easiest. You're just going to look for opportunities to add or swap in your characteristic note. In A Dorian, our characteristic note is F sharp. So if we see an F natural anywhere, we're just going to try replacing it with an F sharp, like I just did in bar 3, where I turned my D minor chord into a D major, which instantly brings out more of a Dorian sound. So now let's listen to the 2 chord progressions, one right after the other. During the replay, I'll highlight each of the modal chords we added so you can see where the changes are most prominent. Now let's try building something new from scratch. And anytime you're writing with modal harmony, I recommend using either period structure or sentence structure to get started. These two structures are kind of like the grammatical frameworks for your music. They allow your music to have a certain flow, which is expected, without coming off as cookie cutter. The same way that following proper grammar while speaking allows you to create any number of sentences that get your thoughts across without necessarily sounding like you're constantly quoting other people. Period structure is a very simple pattern that goes A, B, A, C. To use this pattern, we're going to start off by picking 2 chords to build our section A. Now for this, I very strongly recommend starting with a tonic chord, and then picking one of your characteristic chords. This is the fastest, most efficient way to immediately establish a modal sound in your harmony. So, for example, we could go A minor to D major. The next step is to pick 2 contrasting chords for our B section. And again, these can be any 2 chords from your mode, so long as you like how they sound together. In this case, I'm going to go with G major and E minor. Then we are going to repeat section A before just finding some kind of cadence to end it all, usually a modal cadence. In this case, let's go with an F sharp diminished, followed by an A minor. And let's play it. Now, given that this is the second modal progression we've played back to back, you've probably noticed something. And that is that modal cadences, like this one, just tend to sound weaker than a traditional 5-to-1 authentic cadence, like this. They lack the gravity of a strong resolution, so if your piece needs a more conclusive ending, don't hesitate to just finish with a traditional authentic cadence. It's not strictly modal, but it's fine. You're more than welcome to use whichever strategy you think sounds the best. Speaking of which, to use sentence structure, it's the same basic idea, just a different order. Instead of going A, B, A, C, you'll follow the same steps, going A, A, B, C, where you repeat the A section immediately before going into your contrasting idea and then ending with a cadence. So with that, we've reached the end of another video. I hope this gave you some new tools to experiment with. If you would like to dive deeper into writing expressive chord progressions, melodies, and arrangements, check out my textbook, The Musical Storyteller. Over 400 pages guiding composers to work with everything from ensembles to sound libraries. Digital copies are available on my website, and physical copies are on Amazon. Links are in the description below. A huge thanks goes out to my amazing patrons and channel members. Your support makes this channel possible, and I appreciate each of you more than you know. So until next time, keep studying, keep working hard, and keep writing new music, my friends. I will see you all in the next video.